What rookies do you want to see? Who does Eric Crocker want to see? Who does John Harris need to see this preseason for their rookie year to get off to a good start with a bang and ready to go today on Locked On NFL Draft?
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Show. I'm your host, former NFL and AFL defensive back, Eric Crocker, and of course, as always, joined by my co-host, Ryan Tracy. He is back. He's all moved in, still unpacking, but he's ready to go on the show tonight. And of course, man, Wednesday episode. So we got our guy, John Harris, and that's at J Harris Football, right? On Twitter.
There you go.
There we go. Then we got at Ryan Tracy NFL on Twitter. And of course, you can follow me at Eric_Crocker on Twitter. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And definitely excited to start talking about some rookies. And training camp is right around the corner. So this is definitely a perfect time to start talking about training camp battles, preseason outlooks, all those great things. But let's start with John. Who is a rookie who you are excited to see from around the league during preseason? And that's a big time for guys to kind of really make their mark. Some guys are going to get more opportunities than others. I've been a part of that. But who's the guy that you're looking forward to seeing?
You know, it's interesting with preseason games, and you guys know this, and you probably have gone to a few preseason games, and you look around the fourth quarter, and like there's nobody in the stands, and yet those guys are playing their hearts out, trying to make a team. I always love that fourth quarter of games. But, you know, for me, obviously, I keep my eyes on guys in the AFC South. You know, what's happened in Jacksonville with Trayvon Walker. How does Malik Willis look with the Tennessee Titans? But there's a guy that really intrigues me, and I'm not totally sure why. Maybe it's because my wife and daughter moved out to L.A., or my daughter moved out there, my wife's helping her, and I've always kind of had this fascination with USC football. But I'm really curious to see Drake London with the Atlanta Falcons. When you put Drake London and you put him next to Kyle Pitts. Now, of course, and we've talked about this a bunch, you know, who's going to end up slinging the rock there. I think it's going to be Desmond Ridder before too long. But those quarterbacks are throwing to two super studs in Kyle Pitts and Drake London. But I felt like we were cheated as college football fans. The fact that we didn't get to see Drake London in the last 4 or 5 games. He was completely dominating the Pac-12. He was dominating the game. Anything he wanted to do, he was doing. I think he is an uber athlete when healthy. Watching him on a basketball court is just, phenomenal. I would love to see him do those ball is life, street ball shows and just dunk on everybody. I'm really intrigued by Drake London. He was the first wide receiver in a draft. We all talked about it. There are going to be 5 or 6 guys at wide receiver are going to go potentially in his first round. Jameson Williams and Chris Olave. Olave was the guy that I loved. They're all going to go to the first round. Maybe Jahan Dotson sneaks in there. They did. They all snuck in the top 16. All these receivers. Garrett Wilson go to the Jets. But who's the first one off the board? The guy that had been hurt. But the super athlete, Drake London. I'm really excited to see Drake London in the preseason and see how NFL defensive backs who are, Eric, you're pretty big for a defensive back size, and yet he's got 3-4 inches on you.
Yeah.
And just to see how the Falcons, use him in the preseason. Hopefully he will play in the preseason. But I'm really curious to hear how Drake London's doing in the preseason at training camp. We won't face him. We won't see him this year. But you get all those reports that, hey, London's tearing it up. And with London and Pitts, I'm really stoked to see Drake London. Amongst the AFC South guys, I'll obviously keep an eye on because we'll play them twice a year. But somebody outside the division that I'm really looking forward to is Drake London.
Yeah, definitely Drake London. That's a big one because a lot of people weren't really expecting him to go that high, right? We're talking about top 10, first receiver off the board. There were more dynamic, I do air quotes there if you're listening to it on the audio podcast, but more dynamic receivers, smaller, twitched up, explosive type guys. But man, big time catch radius, super contested catch guy, one of the best that I've seen in recent years. And the Atlanta Falcons, they got 2 of those monsters on the outside right now. I like the way they're building their team. Who's the guy you're looking forward to seeing, Ryan?
I'm trying to look real quick to see if they're going to play each other because I am really keen on that, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen. But it is that matchup, that oversized DB. It's Kaiir Elam and what the Bills do with him. I am really looking forward to seeing a guy that was right on the edge of the first round for me, went a little bit higher than I thought. But in that system, I'm really looking forward because if you can match him with Trey White and he can hold up, especially in the physicality portion of it, which is probably my favorite part of his game, he's got the length, he's got the things that you need to do. Like, he can make an impact right away, or he could be a guy that's got to make a little bit of a transition. I don't know. Like some of the footwork, I know you were looking at that earlier that maybe you had a little bit of a question. You had him a little bit further down, right? But I think, man, he could be boom. I don't think there's any bust in him, and he could be a guy that takes, a quarter of a season to kind of come around. Yeah. But he could be fire out of the gate, so I'm really intrigued to see him in the preseason.
That's definitely a guy. I was going to say he's going to a great situation with who's playing with him, right? And we'll see how soon Tre'Davious White is kind of recovered from some of his injuries. But, man, just those safeties that they have back there, Hyde, Poyer, I mean, they got a terrific nickel and Johnson. He has a great nucleus around him to be able to bring him up to speed pretty quick. Some real legit veterans in that backfield.
I was really impressed with him. I had a chance to meet him. He was on a visit, and he was walking around a building, and I didn't quite know who it was, but I was like, this guy's. I mean, I can tell he's a defensive back, but I wasn't, quite sure. You're not wearing a name tag. You're not wearing their jersey, so it's hard to tell. And then all of a sudden, I was like, I bet that's Elam. And I chatted with him for a couple of minutes, and I came out of there really impressed. Yep. Just he's asking me questions like, "What do you do, John?" I thought that was really, really interesting because you know how defensive backs can get, Ryan. I mean, they can get all about themselves, be all about the diva and all that kind of stuff.
That's more of a receiver thing. Hold on, I got to defend my guys. Okay, I tried to bite my tongue. I tried to hold it in. It's the receivers. They're the divas. The corners were the cool guys. But go ahead.
I wanted to say, but I was really impressed, and I happened to see a video of Elam's interview with the Buffalo Bills at the Combine, and he reached into his bag and he pulled out a notebook, and he showed him a notebook of all the notes that he had been taking about all different, things about, his workouts, scheme, things he had been learning or thinking about. I thought it was really interesting. The Kaiir Elam's a good one. Eric, what do you say? We said
Crocker, I got Jermaine Johnson.
Who you got?
I got Jermaine Johnson. And because this is a guy who some people were saying, man, he's going to go top 5. He's going to go top 10. Dang, is he going to go top 15? Damn, is he not going to go in the first round? So, just the roller coaster of emotions that surrounded him and the Jets being able to trade back into the first round, get him late in the first round. I just want to see, why did he slide? And you hear some kind of off the field concerns and things like that, but he's definitely a guy who we feel like can play, bounced around a little bit, went to a big time university, transferred to a junior college, went to another university. I mean, the guy moved around a ton. Can he find his way and his footing in the NFL to be that consistent guy that people can depend on? That's the guy that I'm looking forward to seeing in the preseason. Does he hit the ground running coming off that edge? Because the New York Jets are going to need it. They have one of the worst defenses in the league. And part of it is, hey, can we be a little bit more consistent up front? And can they help the guys on the back end? So Jermaine Johnson, that's a guy who I'm really excited to see. How does he do right away, especially in preseason?
Oh, I mean, the Robert Saleh defense. I mean, you've got to have dudes up front. I mean, the 49ers spent pick after pick after pick on dudes up front, and it's paid off. I mean, they've ended up, with a guy like Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead. That's what the Jets are trying to do. But when Jermaine Johnson was falling during the draft, and I say falling, I mean, he's falling based on the perception that we in the media all had of him. He still ends up going in the first round. It's a great pick. But when he is not going in the top 15, top 20, I just remember thinking on a draft show, like, Nick, go get him. Like, go get him. Nick Casario, the GM for the Texans, go get him. I mean, you've got ammunition to go get him. But what I ended up finding out later was that the Texans were in agreement with 3 different defensive ends they were bringing into the fold, and so they really weren't looking at defensive end in the draft. But going to New York, I think it's a really good spot for Jermaine Johnson because he might be walking in the most talented edge rusher they have. But if Carl Lawson is back healthy and you put him with Jermaine Johnson, it might not be a bad combo if Jermaine Johnson is all that we think and thought he was going to be coming out of the Senior Bowl. He was just incredible.
Yeah, he was incredible. I think most people would tell you that he's probably the best defensive player there. All right, and we're going to talk about more defensive players, offensive players, rookies from our respective teams coming up next. But first, we want to talk to you a little bit about our friends over at Dave. And, we've all been in situations where we've been in a pinch and we needed a little bit extra cash. Hell, just as recent as a few years ago, my wife and I, we were trying to move into this apartment and we needed some extra cash to help us with the down payment. Well, listen, I wish we would have known about Dave's back then because Dave is here now. And whether you need the money to afford a few gallons of gas, and we know how those gas prices are right now, they are extremely high. Dude, I was just in California. I should have used Dave for being in California out there taking the family to Disneyland. But gas prices are almost $7 per gallon. That is insane. So I know there's probably a lot of people out there in a pinch that need Dave to help. All right. If you are living paycheck to paycheck and you're struggling to make ends meet, it can be really stressful. And when unexpected expenses come up, now you have Dave that can help you in that pinch. Hindsight is 20/20, and you can't change the past. But if you could get a little help from your future self, maybe you'd ask to borrow a little cash from Dave. All right, Dave is a banking app that can help you get up to $500 in cash instantly. All right, the more money to fill your tank, all right, that's more money to buy a wedding gift, to catch up on some bills, and you can finally tackle some of those expenses that you have been stressing about and, maybe have been really hard to take care of. There's no interest and no credit check needed. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to get financial relief, and they're getting a little bit extra cash in their pocket. So if you are in a pinch right now, today, and you need help, download Dave and think of it as a helping hand from your future self. Download the app right now, the Dave app in your app store. All right, that's DAVE, and sign up for an extra cash amount and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve, member of the FDIC. Your future self will thank you. All right, we want to thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, usually I tell you to listen to Locked On 49ers or Locked On Chiefs. But, man, we got so many great podcasts around the Locked On network. So wherever you listen to your podcast, type in Locked On. And I'm pretty sure whatever it is you're looking for, Locked On San Francisco Giants, 49ers, Lakers. I'm saying some of my favorite teams. All right. They have something for all of you there. So tune in, Locked On shows across the platform. So let's talk about some of the guys from our respective teams. Obviously, I cover the San Francisco 49ers. John covers the Houston Texans, and he has his website, footballtakeover.com. Does some things there. You got Ryan Tracy covering the Kansas City Chiefs. But, Ryan, we're going to start with you. Who is a rookie for Kansas City that you are like, you know what, this is the one guy. I want to see how he comes in. Does he hit the ground running? Is he a guy that makes an immediate impact? You guys used a lot of high draft capital on players. Drafted 2 defensive players early in the first round. You drafted a receiver, Sky Moore, in the second round. But who's the guy who you are most looking forward to seeing?
It's funny. You named the 3 guys everybody wants me to say right now. But it's not George Karlaftis, who has been training with Bobby Stroop. Shout out to Bobby. He trains Patrick Mahomes. He's working on his flexibility. He's working on his get off. He's dropped some weight. He's trying to change his type from everything that we saw on film, right? Not just be a power guy. I'm intrigued by him. Trent McDuffie, we know he can play any kind of scheme. How's he going to do in the man scheme that Spags wants to run? That's interesting too. And Sky Moore should be an impact guy, but the guy that I'm keyed up to see is the guy that I think is going to make an instant difference right now today and be a playmaker, and that's Brian Cook. He's going to be the third safety. He's not going to have to play high. He's going to come down to the box, and he's going to wreak havoc. I'm really looking forward to how creative they can get with him because he doesn't have to be in one role, and that's one thing they've had over the years that they've tried to do lately with Dan Sorensen being that third safety. They want to be in dime a lot. I think it's a perfect fit for Brian Cook. I think he's going to do extremely well early.
Ooh, okay, Brian Cook, and that's a guy out of Cincinnati, safety, mixed emotions on him. Some people have him really high. Some people are like, not as high on him. So clearly Kansas City, they were like, you know what, we'll take him off of your hands, and this is a guy that we really like. John, who's the guy you're looking forward to seeing? And before you say anything, man, I've talked about it a lot. The Houston Texans, they have my favorite draft in this entire 2022 class. So there are plenty of players on that team that I'm looking forward to seeing. If I had my vote, I'd say John Mechie, even though I know he might not participate in training camp.
Yeah.
But outside of John Mechie, who's the guy that you're looking forward to seeing?
Well, it's interesting because I think Mechie is just, I would say he's a curiosity. I mean, we all saw him play at Alabama, but being out for OTAs and mini camps and being able to see as much of that as possible, I'm sort of cheating in some sense because I've seen some of the things and some of how things have gone together. We didn't get a chance to see a lot of Derek Stingley because they still kind of hold him back, kind of rehabbing from the injury. So hopefully he'll be ready to go and Kenyon Green will be ready to go. But the guy that from minute one that he walked in the building to I saw him today in the cafeteria has been as impressive as any rookie I've seen come through there is Jalen Petrie from out of Baylor. And Lovie Smith, I remember draft night or Friday night when Jalen Petrie's drafted. I mean, I was just like, I came out of my shoes. I was so excited. Breece Hall had just gone the pick before the Jets, and I really wanted Breece Hall. I wanted a running back with some juice, some people could get excited about. And I wanted Breece Hall. That was not the prudent thing to do. But when Breece Hall was off the board, I then heard in the room, hey, it might be Petrie from Baylor. And then I got excited. And then I thought about, okay, how's this going to work in Lovie Smith's system? Is it more about how Lovie adapts to Petrie or Petrie adapts to Lovie? And I think there might be this confluence of coming together of both, where I think Lovie might do a few different things with Petrie and may do a few things different defensively than he's done because he has Petrie. And I think that Petrie will do some things in the Lovie Smith defense that have always been done, playing a half-field safety, playing a middle-of-the-field safety. He's very comfortable in the box. He's excellent in man coverage. We didn't get to see every OTA. We would see every third one, so we'd see one basically a week. And we were talking to Lovie one day, and he said every single day Jalen Petrie has made a play. And he made a diving pass breakup. And we were talking about that. He said, John, he's picked those passes off in the practices prior to. And I just got really excited to hear Lovie talk with excitement about Jalen Petrie. And then you talk to him and you realize how mature he is. You think, wow, this guy, he's got an opportunity to be a player, a big-time player for this team. I think Jalen Petrie is going to be really, really fun to watch. And he's the guy that I would pick. I've already had fun watching him, and I just trust him inherently. From here on out, I just trust him. And with a rookie, that's where you have to get to. Can you see a game or two where a guy plays well? Yeah. I want to see a guy consistently week in, week out be that guy. And I think Jalen Petrie, the only way that we were going to replace a guy like Justin Reed, who you now know, Ryan, we had to go get a guy like Justin Reed, but a different type, if you will, in Jalen Petrie, and that's what they did.
Yeah, Petrie, definitely big-time playmaker. And, again, I talk about one of my guys, former teammate of mine with the New York Jets, and he was a part of the Baylor coaching staff, and he raved about Jalen Petrie. There's a few guys he's raved about. One, Deebo Samuel, when he was coaching over at South Carolina.
Yep.
Another guy, J.C. Horn. He messaged me like, Crock, you got to look at this guy, J.C. Horn. I'm telling you, you talk about DBs, nobody's talking about this J.C. Horn guy. So this was kind of ahead of the curve. He was right about him. And another guy he's raved about, Jalen Petrie. So we're going to see if that kind of holds true. One guy that I'm looking forward to seeing from the 49ers, who I cover, is Tariq Castro Fields. And he's a cornerback out of Penn State. Got to see him again a little bit while watching Joey Porter Jr., which we're going to talk about in the next segment a little bit. But Tariq Castro Fields, he was a guy who I felt like when watching him, I'm like, how did this guy fall to the 6th round? Like, this is not 6th round type talent. He ran well. He has size. He moves well. Well, we've actually been following each other on Twitter for a while, and he ended up DMing me because I asked this question on Twitter, and he said, man, they had some medical concerns because of a stinger he had 2 years ago. I'm like, what? It sat him out for like half the season or something like that. So some medical concerns, people were worried about that. But on film, I mean, we're talking about a guy who I thought played extremely well, where it was off coverage, press coverage, moved well, challenged himself, has the speed. Now, can you just, hone in on your technique a little bit to become a little bit more consistent? But definitely a guy who I felt like should not have gone 6th round, looked more like a 3rd or 4th round type prospect. So that's a guy I'm willing to see. 49ers got a weird little thing going on right now. They just got Charvarius Ward. They have Emmanuel Mosley, who's solid, but he's entering the last year of his contract. They drafted Ambry Thomas 3rd round last year from Michigan, but it took everybody getting hurt, and he played the last part of the season. They played decent, but I think there's an opportunity for that third corner spot. And we'll see if Tariq Castro Fields is able to kind of get going and get in the groove of the NFL. But enough of those guys. We're going to talk about Joey Porter Jr. up next and either or, because we got John Harris with us. Stay tuned right here, Locked On NFL Draft. All right, John. So, coincidentally, you and I both, I don't know, just randomly watched the same prospect. So, Joey Porter Jr., obviously son of Joey Porter, longtime NFL defensive player, played for Pittsburgh Steelers. I believe he won a Super Bowl with them. Terrific player. All right, but we're watching his son. He's a defensive back. What were some of your thoughts on him?
Length, love it. The one thing that I don't know, somebody said to me the other day, said, hey, you know what you should do whenever you're doing writing up a prospect is think of a comp. People love player comps. They love to compare a player. And, I'm watching the NBA draft and I see, the Rockets drafted Jabari Smith out of Auburn and Kendrick Perkins is throwing up there Sharif Abdul-Rahim and Kevin Durant. And I'm like, Jabari Smith was one of the defensive players of the year in the SEC. Those two are allergic to defense. So player comps can be all over the board, if you will. But as I'm watching him and I see the length and I see how competitive he is, and he is a little bit physical and handsy, I got a little bit of a Sauce Gardner vibe. Now, Sauce was bigger. Sauce was 6'3", and Joey Porter Jr. is like 6'1.5", 6'2". So there's a little bit of a size difference there. But just their styles – I thought were fairly similar. And when I first turned it on, I was like, yeah. I love him in zone. His zone instincts are very, very good. It was, what game was I watching against? It was, gosh, I can't remember who it was. But, it was Auburn. Auburn kept trying to run hitch, run smash and run that short sail or the corner route behind him. So they'd hitch him and then throw the sail behind him or the corner route behind him. And I'm telling you, I've not seen a lot of corners play that route as well as he did because he would squat. And you know how it is playing that cover two corner, Eric. You want so much to bite on that hitch. And then, boom, they stick that corner route behind you. And you're like, help your safety out. And I'm telling you, he played it perfectly. He plays a trap corner pretty well. I was like, all right, let's see him play man. And I had the Ohio State game. It's so funny because what you put on Twitter was the exact play that I was watching against Garrett Wilson. And as I'm watching it, and I don't know if you mentioned this, he ends up getting a DPI on that play. And the reason he got
I mentioned it, and I was so confused by why, it's kind of hard to tell on the all 22.
Right.
So I couldn't see if he grabbed him. But from what I was watching, I'm like, where does flag come? Why'd the flag come in?
Yeah, and that's I think that's the thing. He grabs his shirt at the very end as Wilson is turning. And the only real issue that I have with Joey Porter is just finishing at the top of routes because the one thing he wants to do is grab and kind of clutch. And he, in both games that I saw, he had 2 DPIs, 1 in each game, and I think he had a holding too. So one of the things I was concerned about with Sauce was that when he's coming to the NFL, it's a different game. I think if Joey can clean that up, man, I think you're talking about a guy that can get into that first round. I think I have him at 24, 25 in the Harris 100. I think he can end up being that good because the size is there, the speed is there, the competitiveness is there. He'll talk trash. He gets excited about the game. He's like his dad in that way. I loved a lot about him, but the top of the routes have got to clean up. He's got to stop the grabbing the shirts. He's got to trust his feet, his technique, and his length. And if he can do that, I think he's got a really good NFL future ahead of him.
It's funny. I take a break and you guys start watching the same guy. That's great. So as the one guy who hasn't studied him, but I've watched that Ohio State game before. So Eric, I want to ask you, I didn't make any notes on him. He didn't get that far, but in the back of my mind, I kept saying, I question with the grabbing and just how much it seems like the last line of defense for him. I question whether he has faith in his recovery speed. And I haven't broken him down. So what did you see in that area?
Great question. So I don't think it's so much his faith or not having faith or whatever in his recovery speed. I think it's more about him being able to play with anticipation. So one thing that I noticed, which is good because I want to see how somebody's body reacts. And he naturally reacts extremely well. But if you're not playing with anticipation, sometimes you are going to get a little grabby at the top. If you can feel routes and understand like, okay, I can feel this coming and I know this route or whatever, or I can feel how his body is. And it's weird. It's kind of hard to explain, but the longer you play the cornerback position, you can just kind of feel when a guy is kind of starting to raise up a little bit. Once he's raising up, it's like, oh, he's about to sit his route down, right? But sometimes when you're playing off coverage, it's hard to get that feel, and you have to get your feel more based on route concepts. Well, this particular play with the Garrett Wilson play, Garrett Wilson ran a out, up, and then stop route. And that's a whole lot, especially for a defender who is playing off. So I think he just wasn't playing with anticipation on that play. I don't think he played with much anticipation even outside of that. I think everything was just, I'm a very good athlete. I'm going to naturally react. I think his body reacted well, his feet reacted well, but sometimes that's going to make you get a little grabby at the top of route. So I think that's what John Harris was seeing.
Yep. Absolutely. All right,
overall, he was a guy who I liked him. Maybe not as fluid of an athlete as I typically would like at the cornerback position, which, okay, of course, like he's over 6'1", he's closer to 200 pounds. Those guys' movement skills typically aren't as great. If you do have somebody that has great movement skills like that with that type of size, then there are guys that go top 5, top 10, like a Jalen Ramsey or something, right? Like those guys, even guys like Okuda, I thought he moved very well. CJ Henderson, I thought he moved very well. Sauce Gardner moved extremely well. I don't know Joey Porter quite has those type of movement skills, but it doesn't matter because his body reacts extremely well even when he's playing honest. So that was something that jumped out to me. Definitely has terrific speed. John talked about him from zone coverage, reading concepts. I think he reads concepts well. I just wish he would close with a little bit more sense of urgency, I guess. And I'm speaking more about like 2-to-1 reads, right? So, typically if you're in the cover 3, then you're reading kind of 2-to-1 and you're seeing, okay, is 2 going to go up the seam? If so, I have to be able to squeeze that, especially if 1 sits down. So when 1 sits down and 2 goes vert, I see him, he sees it, he's diagnosing it, right? He's getting there, but at the NFL level, because the ball gets on those guys so quick, you have to squeeze with a little bit more sense of urgency. But overall, man, I mean, he's a guy who I assume will go in the first round. The one other thing that I thought he definitely could be a little bit more consistent at is at the line of scrimmage. He didn't really move his feet much at the line of scrimmage. He was extremely patient, which is good. You want a guy that's patient. You want a guy that isn't giving ground. I think he did those two things very well. But he didn't move his feet at all. So sometimes he'd punch with his outside hand. And if you're impressed with inside alignment and you shoot your outside hand, it's going to lock your hip. So it's going to make it more difficult for you to be able to turn around with a guy. And then that's going to put you in more of a sense of panic or chase mode, and then a lot of your technique is going to go out the window. Then that's when you can start to get a little grabby and things like that. So he definitely can work on, hey, just work your feet a little bit more. You don't got to give a whole lot of ground or anything. I like how he works there. Make the receiver work laterally. Does that terrific. But work those feet a little bit just so you're in position. Your feet aren't just so much stuck in mud.
Yep, absolutely. I'll tell you what, that Penn State defense had some players last year. And I don't know what they finished, but that was a shame that they didn't finish any higher than they did. I thought some underperformed, but Joey Porter Jr., number 9 for Penn State, is one guy to watch. And by the way, you mentioned all those defensive backs. You didn't mention my guy Derek Stingley, so I don't know what's up, but that's cool. All right,
very
either
fluid.
Or time. All right, you guys ready for either or?
Bring it on.
Let's go.
I got one question that I've done 2 different ways. So one for Ryan and one for you, Eric. But I'll start here. All right, start with Ryan because it's been a while. Ryan. Well, I'm actually making you co-GMs right now, so you have to fight this one out.
Okay.
And you're getting to redraft because the big news is Baker Mayfield going to the Panthers, right? So we could argue that the Browns screwed up the top of the 2018 draft. Maybe, maybe not. So I'm giving you the opportunity to redraft for the Cleveland Browns at pick number 1. Full 2020 hindsight, everything you know now. Would you draft for the Browns at number 1 overall, either Josh Allen out of Wyoming or Lamar Jackson out of Louisville?
Ooh. That's
Ryan,
tough
you go
because
first.
So here's the thing, and I know Ryan's going first, but Lamar Jackson, they didn't put him in the top 10 with quarterbacks, and he's taken a lot of disrespect, And I know why, because he maybe doesn't look like your traditional quarterback in the sense of how people think that the quarterback is supposed to look. but he's dominant, and he's probably one of the scariest. When coordinators are preparing to play the Baltimore Ravens, I bet they're losing a lot of sleep trying to figure out how do we game plan against Lamar Jackson. But go ahead, Ryan. I didn't answer anything.
No, you're fine, because I think we'll probably come down on this the same way, because Josh had drawbacks as well. There was accuracy issues. It was anticipation issues. It was not being able to trust himself in the pocket and breaking for no reason. There was a lot of things there as well. So, like, I'm going to do the old cliche, and this is what GMs have to do, folks. When we do these scenarios, it's based on what should happen, and I'm going to go with my grades. And I had one guy slightly higher because of what we saw in terms of not just capability versus how much legs have to be in the game. And I actually had Josh Allen a little bit higher. I had him as a top 10. I had Lamar as a top 15 prospect. So I would say Josh Allen.
Okay. Josh Allen.
Yeah, I'm going to lean on Josh Allen as well. I was a guy who was not high on him. I'm like, why does everybody like this guy? Like, he can't throw a rock into the ocean. But we've seen he's worked on those things extremely hard. I didn't know the person that he was. And if I would have found out how much of a hard worker he is, I always bet on those type of guys. So excited to see, or I'm really happy to see how his career has gone. A guy who I'm pretty sure soon we expect him to be in contention to win an NFL MVP award. But, yeah, Josh Allen is a guy I really like.
Okay, I'm just going to present one scenario just real fast, and maybe it'll rethink it, but with pick number 35 in the second round, a pick that the Browns got from my team, the Houston Texans, in the Deshaun Watson deal. Oh, actually, no, that was for Brock Osweiler. Oh, it was for Brock Osweiler. We had to give up a second rounder to give Brock Osweiler to the Browns. That was actually in 2017, I believe. The Browns selected Nick Chubb, a backfield of Lamar Jackson and Nick Chubb running Greg Roman's offense in Cleveland, and then Kareem Hunt comes in. Does that change your mind at all?
No, because they also were able to get, they had Odell Beckham, they had Jarvis Landry, they had Njoku. So if you tell me you have, all these weapons with that backfield and Josh Allen, because right now, I mean, a lot of this offense has been on the shoulders of Josh Allen, right? Like, there was one game where nobody else aside from him even ran the ball in an entire half. Right. All right, so I'm still going to go with Josh Allen because I do believe, man, you give him a run game with those type of weapons, I think he would have been good. And that defense, too, like how good that Browns defense can be. I still like Josh Allen there. But I don't think it's, just no doubt about it. You got to go with him because, again, Lamar Jackson, I feel like he's being very disrespected as of late.
Very much so. I think I would go with Josh Allen, but very, very close because I had Allen ahead of LJ. But I just feel like Lamar Jackson has been so criminally underrated. And I do think that both of them now create headaches for defensive coordinators. But back in 2018, 2019, I don't think Josh was quite there. You could always rely on Josh to turn into Wyoming Josh, and he'll turn the game back over to you. And that happened in a playoff game against us. The second half, he turned into the guy he was in college. After first half,
they were up 16-0. A lot of people forget that.
Yes. And then he turned into Wyoming Josh, and it was just downhill from there. But he is no longer Wyoming Josh. Okay, you're going to remain the GM for the Cleveland Browns because, if you remember, at pick number 4, a little later, a pick they got from the Houston Texans in the Deshaun Watson deal, they picked Denzel Ward. I'm giving you, knowing how everything pans out, hindsight being 2020, and we know playing cornerback's priority position in the NFL. But there's an opportunity to get a guy who is the best no-doubter at his position in the NFL. Redraft. Eric, you go first. Redraft for the 2018 Cleveland Browns at number 4. Are you taking either Denzel Ward, who they did take, or Pro Bowl stud guard Quentin Nelson? Eric, you go first.
I'm still going Denzel Ward. I mean, now, can I get Denzel Ward to just be a little healthier throughout this process? Because if so, I mean, this is a guy who had made the highest paid cornerback in the entire NFL. So you're playing at a really high level. Those are guys that are kind of hard to come by. He's twitched up. He's very versatile in the scheme that you're able to play with him. Great football player, just has to stay on the field. So I'm still staying with the cornerback.
Okay.
Surprise.
Denzel Ward. All right. I knew that was going to happen, so we got that out of the way. Ryan, is this a difficult answer for you?
It is, because it's a rare talent in Nelson that you can't replace easily. And look what it's done for the Indianapolis Colts. Look at Jonathan Runt. It is, in part, it doesn't matter that he's one of 5 guys. It is in part due to Nelson, period.
Yes.
But I agree. The value in that position, in that round, is not there for a guard. So I would take Ward as well, even though what we've seen there, if he is healthy, maybe it's more of a discussion. But Nelson has turned out to be the better player overall at this point. But I think you still have to go with the corner.
All right.
Awesome. Yeah, and I agree with
happy, E?
that.
Okay.
And yeah, man, go with the cornerback, my guy, Denzel Ward. John, we appreciate you coming on today. Of course, Ryan Tracy, I am glad to have you back. And everyone, we want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, I'm going to say it this time. You got Locked On 49ers with myself and Brian Peacock. You got Locked On Chiefs with my guy, Ryan Tracy. And you can tune into everything that my guy John Harris has going on as well. But until next time, we'll see y'all. Peace.